Hi, my name's Joseph Derbyshire. I'm a Juris Doctor student at Griffith University, and I'm here to complete a presentation or seminar presentation on mixed systems and introduction to Chinese law and legal tradition. We have four key ideas or questions to be examined in today's seminar presentation. The first is, what do approaches of Confucianism and legalism suggest about the role of law in society in China? The second is, what is their relationship to communism? So Confucianism and legalism and their relationship to communism. The third is, who can amend the Chinese constitution? And the fourth is, can a court make comment on or interpret the constitution in China? So let's move on to our first question. What do the approaches of Confucianism and legalism suggest about the role of law in society in China? We'll examine this through a bit of a comparison. Confucianism on the left, legalism on the right. With Confucianism, Li and Tai suggest the Confucian approach trusts in the natural harmony between man's ritual propriety and the natural principles of the universe. Essentially, Confucius believed, as a foundation of his teachings, do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. Legalism, on the other hand, has a lot more cynical view about humanity. The legalist school of thought believes people are driven by self-interest, greed, the green-eyed monster, if you will. People had to be controlled by a strong ruler, strict laws, and harsh punishments. They needed a whip to stay in line. Shi Huangdi's legalist advisor once said, "The ruler alone should have power and wield it like thunder and lightning." That just gives you some idea as to how seriously they take the legalist approach in China. The second topic is Confucianism and legalism and their influence on the role of law in modern day China. Confucianism. Under the Confucius beliefs, law plays a secondary role in shaping human behavior. Confucius believed there were four fundamental human virtues: humanity, righteousness, propriety, wisdom. And those four human virtues are what guided people to act in a positive manner and keep society functioning. The law was only required for those who fell below the line of societal expectation, and this was generally as a consequence of negative environmental influences or lack of education. The legalist approach, on the other hand, has a much more cynical view of human behavior. Law is the foundation for society. And by law, they mean fear. The only way a state can function is by issuing laws and by severely punishing those who violate them. When legalism was first introduced in China, there was a very low literacy level. So some people didn't even realize they were breaking the law, but they were being punished for it, and their families were being punished for it. It was a bit of a tough learning curve. Legalists assumed that men were, by nature, evil, and that consequently they would commit crimes if state authority did not discipline them. Essentially, if you could commit a crime, that will put you in a better financial or social position and get away with it. Why wouldn't you? Finally, in summary, Confucianism and legalism. Confucianism and legalism construct alternative and opposing moral contexts, each providing rationalization for the ultimate triumph of its respective sponsoring social order. Both Confucianism and legalism believe that there needs to be a senior figure up the top, a leader, for lack of a better word. The difference is how much authority and jurisdiction should that leader hold. Here we can see Confucianism and its relationship to communism. Confucianism can be seen as a key to preserving Chinese communism. China continues to assert itself in global affairs as a key playmaker, or very centrally. Historically, the Confucianism belief in social harmony, maintained by hierarchical relationships under a single authority figure, was used to justify indisputable autocratic rule by the emperor. As a preeminent political philosophy prior to communist rule, Confucianism is a predecessor of Chinese communism, making the Chinese Communist Party heirs to the Confucius and Confucian political tradition. Continuing the story. Here we have Shang Yang. He was an infamous and brutal legalist kin statesman. We're about to hear from what he said in the next slide in relation to legalism and its role and its relationship with communism in modern day China. Shang Yang, who we saw on the previous slide, tells us, when the sage rules the state, he is able to consolidate force and to spend force. Hence, he who rules the state well consolidates force to attain a rich country and a strong army. Something may have been lost in translation there, and it may sound a little bit cryptic, but you need to remember that this was a significant time ago. Consolidating force is a very good description of what is happening in the Xi Jinping era in modern day communist China. What we've seen with Xi Jinping is an extension to the life term of rulership. Xi Jinping's speech at the 19th Party Congress. This is just one quote from his 12-hour speech. The party leads everything. Party, government, army, people, scholars. The party is a most exalted force of political leadership. Such a concentration of power is not inherent in Confucian thought. Confucius himself, while assuming exemplary kingly rule, imagines a politics that allows sufficient social freedom for individuals and ministers to exercise a kind of moral autonomy when deciding upon what the right thing to do is. Now we move on to who can change the Chinese constitution. Not only are we going to discuss who can change the Chinese constitution, but we're also going to discuss how easy it appears to be, or how simple the process is. So there's a minimum procedural requirement for amending the constitution. The legislation law doesn't govern this process, that's worth noting. All that is required is that any amendment must be proposed by the NPC Standing Committee or by 1/5 or more of all NPC delegates, and it must be adopted by ballot as opposed to, say, a show of hands or do the ayes have it, by affirmative votes of 2/3 or more of all incumbent NPC delegates. So if we break it down to a 3-step process, although technically it's only a 2-step process, but with a majority, step 1 is a formality. The party, through its central committee, adopts and submits to the NPCSC proposals for amending the constitution. At a single session, the MPCSC studies the parties' proposals, then approves and submits to the MPC a draft constitutional amendment. The MPC deliberates and adopts a constitutional amendment. Seems pretty straightforward, and in reality, it is. The only delay to this is a time frame for each of the sittings. So, for example, with regard to a standing committee, it could be up to 10 days. Moving on. Can a court make comment on or interpret the Constitution? Well, the short answer is yes. Despite the best efforts in recent years and repeated attempts to prohibit the Constitution from being mentioned in SPC judgments, the short answer is still yes. And I bring to your attention here a journal article by Daniel Sprick, The Judicialization of the Chinese Constitution. Between 2014 to 2016, Daniel Sprick examined thousands of cases that were held before the SPC, or the Supreme People's Court. And more than 900 cases between 2014 and 2016 quoted the Constitution as part of legal reasoning in their judgments. That tells you that there needs to be a degree of interpretation or commentary surrounding the Constitution and its application in proceedings in China's highest court, which is the SPC. So the short answer again is yes. Here we have the reference list. Thank you very much for your time. 10 minutes is not a very long time to discuss the matters that we've discussed, but I've endeavoured to give an acceptably detailed overview and response to the questions I was provided, and I hope that you learned something from this seminar. Thank you for your time.